Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through a list of trends that some of you think need to stay and other trends that need to go. I asked this question over on my community tab and there was a lot of replies, so I'm just going to jump right into it and try to get through as many as possible. So the first one from Danielle says, forcing authors to go on social media and market their own books. What's the point of getting a publishing deal at that point if they don't advertise for you? I don't think this is a specific 2023 trend, but I do agree that this needs to go. I'm very frustrated on behalf of authors that are traditionally published. There are, of course, pros and cons to traditional publishing versus self-publishing. And one of the things that you give up when you traditionally publish is the complete creative control. There are going to be things that are outside of your control. For example, some authors don't even get to name their own books. They don't get to contribute to the title. They're kind of told this is what the title's going to be. It's not the same for everybody, and the amount of freedom and flexibility authors have depends on their contract, who they're published with, those sorts of things. However, it is frustrating to me that you will see so many authors, especially authors who are giving advice to people that want to break into the publishing world. They will tell them you're going to have to market your book yourself. And a lot of them will even recommend that you take the money from your advance, which is probably going to be small if you're a new author, and then essentially, you want to invest that into the marketing of that first book so that it meets the advance. If you don't know how it works, I'm so sorry for breaking this down when you're like, I just want to hear about more trends. But what happens for most authors is that they get an advance. Let's say it's $10,000. And that advance is not going to be anything they get royalties from until it's met, meaning that a lot of people have this idea that as soon as a book is published, all the royalties are going to the author. That's not the case. They're not going to see anything until that threshold has been crossed, and then from there, they'll start getting royalties, and I believe it's referred to as earning out. And for a lot of authors, earning out is such a big accomplishment. It's a big achievement. It's a goal, because whether you earn out or not can determine whether you get signed for future books or whether they want to have you write the sequel, which is why a lot of first books in series, I think this has changed over the years, but a lot of first books in series used to feel like they kind of ended, and then the next one would start, and then it felt like, okay, now we're fully into the series. And you don't find that to be the case as much anymore, because I think signing series is becoming a little bit more common, or at least there's more faith in authors that they will earn out. I don't know all the specifics, and it fluctuates and changes from author to author, but I went on a really long sidetrack. My point just being, it makes me sad that a lot of times authors are encouraged to invest at least part of their advance into marketing themselves. As Danielle said, it feels like that's the biggest perk for a lot of people for traditional publishing. Now, I spent so much time on that first one, I'm really sorry. Let's move on to another one. So Rachel says, I'm personally loving the cozy fantasy trend, but a subgenre trend I'm tired of is Greek retellings. And some of you replied, yes, agreed with the Greek retellings. So cozy fantasy, I'm all about it. I'm really excited that it's now such a prominent part of fantasy. I do fear that cozy fantasy might fall into becoming somewhat superficial. Not to say that I think that authors would be determined to just write something that's going to fit within a trend so that they make money or anything like that, but just that what makes us love cozy fantasy is that feeling of nostalgia or the atmosphere. Like, I think Legends and Lattes created a wonderful atmosphere, and it's that lower stakes that make you feel like, oh no, because you care about the characters, but the stakes are more relatable in a sense. They don't feel like everybody's gonna die and the world's gonna end, and that's kind of comforting, but you still feel for the characters, which a lot of us like. So when I say I fear it's gonna be superficial, what I'm saying is that I am afraid that publishing will see that it's a trend, and then they'll just capitalize and they'll put out whatever without giving the book its fair chance, really putting in the amount of editing that is required to make it what it needs to be. I think there's this idea that things that are happy or things that are positive are not as analytical or well thought out. And this you can apply to reviews. I will see often that when somebody makes a glowing review, talks about why they love something, they can go really in depth, but for some reason we seem to find that reviews that really pick something apart and are really negative in nature are somehow more honest, or like I said, more analytical, that they're really able to dissect it better than the positive review. And sometimes that's true. I think when you're negative in talking about something, you kind of want to build your case for why you feel that way and why you're saying kind of mean things about this work of art. But I find that we can't have this generalized view that positive things are flippant and silly and lack depth. And what I don't want to have happen is for the cozy fantasy subgenre to become such a trend that it actually proves that point true, if that makes sense. As far as Greek retellings, I mean, I also am kind of tired of them. I feel bad because I think there's probably a lot of authors out there who have had a Greek retelling in mind for a long time, and they finally they finally got their book sold, and now we're all kind of tired of seeing it. And so I hate for that to possibly occur, which is why fae stories, because I think a lot of us are kind of pretty tired of that, but I still try to give certain fae stories a go if I think the plot sounds interesting, and I will still recommend them if I think that they're really good. I also recommend things I don't love, just because if I think that you might like them, then I'm going to recommend them. But I would like it if we started to... I think the better way to describe what I'm feeling is I want publishing to not just ride the Greek retelling trend. I would like it if they pulled from different cultures, from different mythologies, and gave us really great stories that weren't just the ones that we're all really familiar with. Next one, Nev. So I don't really know your name, but that's your username. Cozy fantasy. So you agreed, 100% can stay. But what needs to go are mediocre sequels that could have been better, but they just wanted to publish the book sooner rather than later. Quality over quantity, please. This ties back into what I was saying in the first trend, which is that I think publishing is to blame, basically. This is not intended to be part two to my to publishing from readers, please stop, but some of it is resulting in that. I think a lot of times the publisher is putting a deadline on these authors and forcing them to get books out right away. And I know that they want to capitalize because a lot of readers, I think, go into sequels and they don't really want to reread the first book, even when they know it's to the detriment of their reading experience with the sequel, to a point where sometimes they might even rate the sequel lower because they're like, I just didn't really remember, so I might have to reread this again, which I try not to ever fall into that. But on the flip side, kind of, I guess, defending the decision to try to get books out sooner, there are a lot of people that will not touch a series until it's done. And I think that those people are not to be blamed for the author's success or anything like that, because you need people that are going to give books a chance when they're first out, and then you need the people that are going to devour the whole series in one sitting, because that continuity from book to book is important. And I think that you need both groups. And also I want to add financially, some people just can't take a chance on all these new releases, or they don't have the accessibility through their libraries. Maybe they don't even live near a library, or their internet access isn't very good. So I don't think it's really fair to put it on readers. I'm not sure I know the solution, because I think it can hurt an author's chances if they take too long to get the next book out. Sometimes people will have forgotten about the first book. They don't really feel like rereading the first book if 3 years have gone by and they only just now got the second one. I do think what's unfair, though, is the big name authors will sometimes get a lot more time because they've kind of paid their dues. But ironically, it feels like sometimes those authors are edited less. So I'm like, well, then what's taking so long? So I also feel bad because for the authors that are newer, they probably still have their day jobs, or they might still have their day jobs. So they're trying to fit into these really intense deadlines while still having everything else going on in their life. And that added stress, I can just only imagine, is really challenging. But I do agree with the idea that some sequels have felt like the quality just dips pretty low, and that's always disappointing for a lot of us when we read a first book and we love it and we go into the second one and it's not as good, and it never seems to be as good as the first. That can be kind of worse than if none of it had ever been very good. Next one, amateur Crastinator says, this might not be a 2023 thing specifically, and I'm mostly thinking about Rick Riordan. I've noticed that they've re-released the Percy Jackson books 3 to 5 times now with new cover art. I have nothing against the new cover art, but repeatedly releasing the entire book with new art feels like a cash grab. I don't disagree. I think sometimes, I hope, I don't know if this is true, if I'm being charitable in my interpretation of that decision, my charitable interpretation is that the money that they make from that, they can then put into new authors. They can put it into new deals, or the advancements that they give an author can be higher as opposed to the really low end that, what the heck, that's not even enough money. They deserve more. So that's the charitable interpretation, that they know people are going to check those out, buy them, they'll make money, and they're using it for good. But realistically, and also maybe cynically, I'm like, they're probably just trying to make money, and I don't know if it's actually going toward authors or going toward better deals and better contracts. I hope it is. As far as just the aesthetic of having books with different covers and having things re-released, because Shadow and Bone has had different covers, and a lot of older series, Red Rising, you're seeing special editions of that come out again. I'm a sucker for new covers. As long as the series got all of the original artwork done, and then we're seeing new covers later. Nobody likes mid-series cover changes. But I am a sucker for it simply because I like the idea of there being different forms of expression for artists and different opportunities for artists. And obviously with the uptick in AI art, I feel like it's getting more and more difficult for artists to even have freelance drawing, painting, whatever it is they do, being their full-time job. And so for them, I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty cool opportunity if an artist can get that chance to have their art style on a really well-known series. That's great. But there are cons to this. So I don't know if I want to say that I think it should go, but I think what I'll say is I hope the money's being used wisely. But I have no way of knowing. Next up, Marie reads books, having different special editions for almost every book box and multiple stores, cap it at 1 or 2 special editions, plus the regular edition, and let everyone move on. I do find that it feels like nowadays you're getting the Barnes & Noble exclusive, the Waterstones exclusive, Broken Bindings doing an edition. Oh, look, Illumicrate has one too. And you're like, all right, that's so many. And sometimes for books that you're like, I don't even know if I'm going to like this. So I don't disagree that having that many for a book that's just now coming out is a little much, but kind of similar to what I was saying before in the previous trend, that I do like the opportunity for artists. Now, what I will say is, I don't like when all the special editions look basically exactly the same, because then I'm like, what's the point? Like, this one has blue edges, and then the Barnes & Noble exclusive, the cover is just a different color, and then this one is the UK edition, except for with different colors, and then there's also the regular UK edition, but then also Fairy Loot is also in the UK like Illumicrate, so they're going to do their own thing, and their thing's actually different than the other ones, so I'm like, okay, can they all have something unique about them? So that's, I think, my extension of what you've said. Elise, I believe is your name, putting blurbs/recommendations on the back cover instead of a proper synopsis. Also, stickers can go, in particular the fake ones, where they're actually printed on the cover. I refuse to buy those. I think that this is a trend that has existed for a long time, and we all hate it. I think my friend Sophia from Sophia's Thoughts, I'll have her channel linked. I think she's the one that sent that there's a company now that's making stickers that you literally will put onto the book that fill in what the image should be. So you can put that on there, and then it makes the whole cover look cohesive and you hardly notice it's there, which I think is a great idea. I'm just like, oh, but do I care that much? I mean, I think the concept is really cool, but I think I'm with you where I probably am just not going to buy those unless it's a floppy paperback like The Way of Kings. I'm doing this like I'm holding it because I can just feel it. It's such a good feeling. But I don't think I buy too many that have those permanent stickers. And also, nobody likes them. Nobody likes them. I wish they would stop. I've mentioned before, I've done editions videos where I go through and show different editions from different countries, different special editions. I've done it for Shades of Magic, for Red Rising, for Spinning Silver, which was one of my favorites. Oh, those editions are great. But other countries will put what is kind of like a third sleeve. I say a third, like the size, not half, but a third, around. And it just has whatever information that would likely be conveyed in our stickers. But you can just take it right off. And I'm like, that's such a better idea. But maybe also it's more wasteful. With paper, I'm not really sure. But the permanent stickers, I'm just like, why? Do I really need to know that there's a bonus map inside? No, I don't. I can flip the book open and see that. So anyway, I'm in agreement with you. The blurbs rather than actual synopsis, yes, I agree. I would rather know what the book is about than the fact that somebody's like, a great time. I always have mentioned that Robin Hobb has one of my favorite blurbs ever, and it's on, I think, the first Mistborn or one of Sanderson's books, and it says something like perfect for people who want like a good fantasy read, or so. It's like so generic it could go on any book, and I'm like, oh good, so helpful. Which is not me making fun of Robin Hobb. I don't know what they expect authors to say that's gonna blow me away and say much, because they don't really say much. Next, for a trend that should stay, the selling of books with sprayed and stenciled edges right from the bookstore. I'm tired of being on waitlists for BookBox subscriptions that I end up hating the books they give anyway. I want to just walk into a bookstore and pick a book I want with fun details. Yeah, I would love that. You're seeing it for usually books that are already well known, like The Song of Achilles. I think Barnes & Noble did an edition that had sprayed edges. And you're seeing some of these bells and whistles right from the start. Fourth Wing, as a lot of us know, had that. I would love that if they would do that more. The only downside is that I think a lot of these special edition book boxes are the ones to give credit to as far as pushing publishers to actually put a little more effort in, especially for the price that we're paying, because it is kind of astounding that I can pay for a subscription book that's going to have artwork on the inside, that's going to have an alternate naked hardback, and all these extra details for basically the same price if I were to just get a basic brand new hardback from Barnes & Noble, we'll say. And so I do appreciate that a lot of these book box companies, I think, are the catalyst. They're the thing that's pushing these companies to be like, oh, we should try a little harder. Because if I have a choice of if I'm going to go to the bookstore and get that basic book or the book box edition, I might want to get the book box edition. Now, obviously, the publisher's still making money and whatnot because they're the ones that have to give the rights. But I think you get what I'm saying, where I feel like people are seeing these special editions, and I love the bookstore. I don't want to stop going to the bookstore, but I also don't want to waste money. So anyway, you get what I'm saying, I'm sure. So where I'm going with all this is to say, some of these little book box companies, I think they truly are small companies just filled with people who are passionate about reading and they're passionate about books, and they want to give us really beautiful editions of books that they think we're going to love. And it makes me sad, the idea that these big bookstores that hopefully are doing well, because I don't want bookstores to go out of business, but it just makes me sad to think that some of these established bookstores that are these massive companies might end up giving such competition to these book boxes that they would push them out of business, when I think that these are smaller businesses to start with, and I generally find that smaller businesses, they face all the heat that bigger businesses face, but they have less of the profit, and they're usually so few, they have so many fewer employees too. So I don't know, I just I'm on the fence. Like, I do want more of that, but I guess I want the book boxes to continue to push themselves, is maybe the best way to end that. Nicholas says, gotta get rid of multiple editions being sold at separate locations, each with their own bonus content. And then a few of you agreed. I definitely talked about this in my 2 publishers from readers, so we probably won't go super in depth, but yeah, I think that trend is weird. I don't care if the bonus material is unnecessary and it's just a fun bonus, but if it is necessary to the plot, that's stupid. Don't do that. Don't force readers to have to buy all the editions, or go to the store and just look at the what's there and then leave and don't buy the book, or people are just going to post the content online. Anyway, I agree. I think that that's ridiculous, with the asterisk of unless it's not important and it's just a fun bonus, then I don't really care. Next, JC, love the cozy moment, more please, so another cozy. I can't think of something that I hate enough to want people who enjoy the thing to not have it. And I really wanted to read this one just because I feel like that's so sweet and that's so nice. And so I just wanted to kind of commend you for being like, I don't know, if other people like it, then what does it affect me? I just thought that was such a nice sentiment. but also this whole video is kind of like, yeah, but can these other things go? I'm tired of them. So moving on. Gracie, publishing mediocre books just because they have tropes that are trending on Book Talk and people hyping these books up just because of these tropes. This feeds into the trope marketing. I did do a whole video in talking about Chloe Gong's Immortal Longings, where I kind of talk about trope marketing and the pitfalls of that and how that can be really hurtful to an author's career in the long run, even if initially they're making a decent amount of money, or it doesn't allow authors to ever go outside of their Book Talk box, we'll call it. And I think that that ultimately is a negative thing. I, in general, am not a fan of books being published when they aren't polished. If they are traditionally published and they have the team of people working to make it the best it can be, I just feel like it's unfair to the author and the reader to not put in that time and effort. That said, a lot of these books do really well and they bring a lot of people joy, and a lot of people end up really getting back into reading because of these things. So while I might deem them mediocre, while I might deem them mediocre, and maybe some of you would as well, there's also part of me that's like, oh, but if they're bringing joy to people and they're helping people get into reading again, or I don't know, maybe they're just like the perfect thing a person needs when they get off of their 10-hour nursing shift or something, then I'm just like, well, is my standard of quality, should that determine? I think you get what I'm saying. I'm kind of saying what JC said a second ago, where I'm like, do I hate it enough where, but what I will say is, I don't think I'm going to clarify. I don't have a problem with these existing so long as we continue to have other books that maybe have a higher amount of editing involved, or the development of the world, or the development of the plot, or how much depth is given to the characters and the themes, those sorts of things. The writing itself, as long as these books continue to exist over here, I don't really care if these other things exist over here. And an analogy that maybe other people can't relate to, but I'm going to say anyway, I went to school for music. I think a lot of you know that. And I enjoy pop music, you know? It's nice to listen to when I'm cleaning or whatever, when I need like some energy. But there is basically no pop music at all in my mind that comes even close to the level of complexity, artistry, talent that is classical music. So I feel like in that sense, I'm like, well, I don't want pop music to go. I just don't want us to no longer have this over here. And I think that this over here still exists. You know, I can still go to the Phoenix Symphony and see professionals play. I can still go to musicals if I want to see professionals that I think sing in a way that is like, oh my gosh, how is it even possible for people to have these angelic voices? And also, I'm not trying to say literally, I did kind of say it a second ago, I'm not saying there's literally no talented pop artists or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the music tends to be within like the 3-minute to 4-minute mark, and it usually follows a very simple chord progression, and you can write the lyrics out in a pretty short amount of time as far as like the complexity of the lyrics themselves. Whereas if you're looking at like the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, that was originally deemed unplayable when it was first written, and of course violinists are like, oh, we can do it, and then they're like learning this absolutely absurd piece of music, as is so much violin music and so much classical music in general. It's just like, they're different, right? They're different, but both serve different purposes. Like I described with pop music, it is fun for just feeling like you want to move, and also sometimes it's about the beats, it's about the rhythms, and I'm sorry that this is turning into a music thing, but then the enrichment of my soul, I feel like, that I get from this over here, I mean, both matter and both are important, just at different times and for different people, and I'm not disagreeing entirely. I'm just saying that I know that some people really love the tropes that you get in books, and they don't really care too much beyond if a book has a certain trope or not. So I hope you didn't think I was telling you, Gracie, I hope you're not thinking I'm like, well, what the heck? I hope that's not the case. I think that you probably, if you were able to elaborate, you would likely agree. But if you didn't agree, that's fine too. I feel so bad. I really hope that didn't come across like, let me explain to you the difference between quality and... Anyway, I'll move on. Jack says, most things can stay, to be honest, but I think we need to leave bully romances in 2023. I love certain more taboo romance tropes. I would love to talk to a psychologist to dissect why we have, and I say we, I mean some people in society, enjoy reading that, because I don't think many people would want to be bullied and then fall in love with the person or want to have intimate relations with the person who is causing them harm. I don't think most people want that, but then why do we like it in our fiction? And on the flip side, most of us are not fans of violence, I would hope, but then sometimes you just get like an amazing fight scene in a book and you're just like, yeah. So, you know, what is it? Why is it? Why is it that we want those things in our books? So while I don't personally love it, I'm like, well, I don't know why some people like it. And my big thing is like, is it harming people? And for some people, I think you have to be really careful when publishing things that aren't labeled as taboo romances. Because I think that you're like, okay, I'm going in knowing this is going to be very adult and very dark. But when something isn't marketed that way and it's just like, oh, here I am. And then, I don't know, people can read it and then books can affect us, right? We usually talk about that in a positive way, but they can negatively affect us too. But I also am not I hope that doesn't come across like I'm saying like, well, let's censor the stuff I don't like, because that's not what I'm saying. I guess I need further research as to the repercussions of bully romances on the human mind. But I don't like them, so I guess I'm in agreement with you there. I've just not really read very many of them, I think. Next person, Sarah. Adult books being super expensive as compared to YA. If a YA book can get by at $15 to $20, so can an adult book. Also, novella should be cheaper than a big chunky epic fantasy. I'm looking at you, Murderbot. There's no reason those tiny books should be so expensive. I touched on this in a different video, and you know, some people were explaining that it's almost like shipping in bulk can at the end of the day kind of be cheaper than if you were to ship smaller things. Because I don't need to explain that concept. So it's a similar idea with printing. But I also countered with the fact that what you're saying exactly, what then how come YA books versus adult books go for a different price? And, you know, some people say it's because adult books, it's believed to be that you are an adult, their target demographic is an adult, and thus you have money. And you can buy it, whereas young adults maybe don't, and they're having to get their parents to buy it for them. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't work in a publishing house. I don't know what goes into pricing. But they're pretty expensive. I feel like they're getting kind of outrageous. And I've always been a big fan and shouted out my local bookstores because financially it's the only way I can have some of the books that I have. But I just don't think that, what I was saying before, that the extra amount of money that they might be making is going back to the authors and I don't want to just say authors, all the people that are working for the publishing house that are putting in the long hours and they're forced to live in Manhattan or whatever, somewhere in New York that's crazy expensive, but then they aren't being paid much at all and they could do their work remotely, but they have to live in that area if they want to work for this publisher. You know, you all remember all this stuff going on probably at the beginning of 2023. But anyway, I'm with you. They're too expensive. They're too expensive. Illustrated covers in the adult romance genre need to dial it back. They're starting to look too YA. Example, Wildfire from Hannah Grace is new adult, I think, so I get shelving it could be hard. I see it in the younger YA section a lot, but it has spicy scenes throughout, and I think if the cover was a bit more grown up, it would help booksellers and parents out, LOL. This obviously isn't limited to Hannah Grace's books, just the first that came to mind. And you weren't the only one, Nicole, I think it's your name. You weren't the only one who mentioned this. Other people said too that they don't like the covers. I certainly like the covers more than just like the shirtless sexy man and then the woman whose like sleeve is falling off her shoulder a little bit and they're looking at each other longingly. If you like those covers, that's great. They're not my favorite. I like the cutesy covers more, but some of them I'm like, I could have done that. And I never want to feel like that when I'm looking. I never want to be like, I probably could have done that like this afternoon. So I'm with you. Just because some of them are cute, like some of them actually, they look intentional and they look like an art style. And then some of them look like they handed it to a child and they're like, here, whatever, this is your assignment. And then they took it and they're like, all right, we'll use this. After that, extreme overconsumption, like book hauls with 200 plus books. And somebody said this, I would say 20 is already an overconsumption. And then someone else said, this is part of the reason I've stopped watching certain booktubers. I've started just walking around bookstores and libraries again to see what my next read will be. I love just walking around bookstores and libraries. I think it's so fun. I did a whole video last year where I purposefully went to my library and picked up books that I'm like, I don't know about these books, just to kind of discuss, do we tend to find that what we're influenced by on the internet and social media, does it give us negative recommendations or positive recommendations, and just the experience in general, which was a lot of fun. I didn't end up loving either of the books I picked up, but I still really enjoyed that experience, and also the nostalgia for a lot of us, because that's what it was like when we were younger, to just go and look and wonder at all these possible stories that we could have and that we knew nothing about. And it's hard nowadays to achieve that because we hear books talked about so often. That said, I like book hauls in the sense that I think book hauls can, one, raise awareness about local bookstores. At least I try to do that when I do book hauls. They can at least give attention to books that maybe the person's not going to have a chance to talk about them right away, but it might put something on your radar. So, for example, like the City of Dreaming books is something that I'd never really heard people talking about, and then I think I saw somebody talk about it in a book haul or something, and they described it, and I'm like, oh, that sounds really different and interesting, and I have yet to read it, but I did find it at my local bookstore, and then I'm like, okay, well, I want to give this a try, and I think my husband would like this too. Maybe we can buddy read it. So I do think book hauls can serve to kind of open your eyes to things. And then special editions, I think we've had enough conversations already in this video about special editions, and that's been a topic of a lot of videos this last year. But also, I mean, like, I get excited about special editions. I know that's not for everybody. All that to say, I don't think I've ever had 200 books in a book haul. I've never seen it. I can't tell if you're exaggerating or if I've just not seen it. And I don't want to accuse you of exaggerating, because it is very possible I've just not seen 200 plus books in a book haul before. That is a lot of books. So, I mean, I don't think I could get through a video of 200 books, because I'd just be like, did you move and you sold all of your books and you're repurchasing them? How are you getting 200 books all at once? That, or you have some, like, a lot of friends that buy you books or something, or you have a lot of money. I don't know, but 200 books is a lot. I would say 20 is already an overconsumption with the kind of like, I'm sweating, I'm sorry emoji. I'm sure I've had at least 20 in a book haul before, so maybe that's overconsumption. I don't mind if you label it as overconsumption. I'm not offended. I think it's an important conversation, and you approached it very sweetly. It's not like you were saying, like, these people are what's wrong with the world or something. So as a trend, though, is that a trend? I guess that's the question I need to come back to. Is this a trend? The people having these book hauls with hundreds and hundreds of books in them. It's not a trend I've seen, but I think my whole reason for liking book hauls kind of goes out the window if you have that many in a video. So maybe I would say I also don't like ones that have 200 plus. I might agree that it needs to go, because I don't really know what purpose it's serving. But also, to go back to JC way earlier, I'm like, is it hurting anybody though? It's not my favorite. That's what I'll say. I do declare. Anika says, publishers saying everything is a book talk sensation when plenty of other platforms have content makers. Thanks. I think that's appreciated. I do get kind of sad when I see tables or stands at Target that say, like, as seen on Book Talk, and I'm like, oh man, because I'm like, I've been here. Not that I want it for myself. I just mean, like, BookTube has existed for a long time, and it is kind of funny to see books that have been talked about, kind of been there, done that books on BookTube, become popular, like Six of Crows or something, or Song of Achilles. They become popular on Book Talk, and suddenly it's a Book Talk sensation. You're like, it was a sensation before. It's just BookTube or Book Talk found it. Gosh darn it. These sentences would be better if I could actually say the right word, but you get what I'm saying. Cameron has an interesting one. Having consumerism rants during book hauls, not only buying the books new from major retailers, but then still buying a bunch of expensive books while complaining about consumerism. Almost every book YouTuber I watch has done it at least once this year. So I'm trying to think back. I'm like, have I done that? I think I'm pretty firmly in the camp of we've had a lot of conversations about consumerism as a whole in the community. And I'm like, what am I going to say that's new? I think I've had that conversation in years past, but I'm trying to think in this last year if I've had a conversation about consumerism. I think I've acknowledged, hey, I'm really privileged. I live in a country where books are readily available. I have the opportunity to read. My class and my gender do not influence whether I have the opportunity to read. And just a lot listing, like, I have a lot of things that are wonderful that allow me to read. And then there are other people who don't even have a safe place to live or food to eat or clean water to drink. And it feels very unfair. And here's some links in the description bar. I've done that. I know I've done that. I did it recently. But the consumerism during... This is kind of returning to is this a trend? It is kind of interesting that pretty much everybody you watch has done that this year. And it's interesting that they would complain about consumerism as an issue while embracing a form of consumerism, I guess. It feels like a little, hey, do you not see how these clash a little bit? But as somebody who has not seen these, I don't want to assume the worst or put words into people's mouths that weren't said at all. So I guess what I'll say is I think I think it's important to acknowledge privilege and to... I guess I'm going back to, like, if I saw a video where somebody was doing the 200 plus book haul and then they were talking about consumerism being an issue, I'd be like, what are you doing? But as far as whether I think it's a bad thing to talk about consumerism, I guess if it became a trend, this is the core of, I think, what I'm trying to articulate. If it's become a trend to address it, but then not really actually live by the thing you're talking about or internalize it, then I think that's weird. If it's just like, I saw these other people saying it, so I'll say it too. I think that's kind of goofy because it's not sincere. It's not genuine. So, don't do it. But if people are sincerely like, hey, I love to buy books, but I also know I should probably stop. So I don't know. That'd be kind of weird. That'd be weird too. I don't know. I think just don't be insincere. Don't do something just because you're seeing everybody else do it, I guess. This next one says, not being able to criticize things you love, not knowing that there is, in fact, a difference between I love this book and this book is so good, attacking people who have negative opinions on a book. All opinions are valid, whether you like them or not. How much time you got? I can go on for hours. So I think for me, I just really am pretty firm in believing that so much, like you said, like so many opinions are valid. And I want people to be able to express what they don't like. I also want people to express what they do like. And I don't want to try to label anything as objectively that was good or that was bad, because I'm like, how could I, one individual, decide what is objectively good or not? So I never want anybody to feel like that's what I'm saying. If ever I say this book is so good, but I don't add in my opinion or to me, if I don't add that, then I hope nobody gets the impression that I'm literally saying this is good, and if you disagree, then you're wrong. And the flip side, if I don't think something is good, I don't want other people to feel like they can't love it or feel bad for loving it or think that I think they're stupid or they have bad taste. I just never want to encourage that way of looking at things. I am very much in agreement that people should be able to express what they didn't like about something, and for people to not conflate that criticisms toward a book are not criticisms toward you just because you like that book. You are not that book. You're a human being who is alive, and you have thoughts and feelings, and that book is an object. So it's okay to criticize it. I know it can be hard. I've actually thought about doing an entire video dedicated to whether, when people say, I love seeing different opinions, I actually love seeing people criticize the books that I love. And some people that's probably true for, and other people I'm like, do you though? I don't think you do. And there are plenty of comments that I have seen where people will be like, I was just disagreeing with you. And you're like, no, you weren't. You said you were saying a lot of insulting things to the reviewer, or you were saying a lot of insulting things to the person for expressing they didn't like something. And I just don't know that everybody really actually is I don't know that we're always in the mindset to hear criticisms about our favorite things. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I know I just stated that we are separate from our favorite things, but it can still feel a little personal sometimes. And if you're you have to reflect and you have to ask yourself, do I want to hear this? Because you're, at the end of the day, you are making the decision to watch or read a negative review, because most people are not hiding when they didn't like something, or most people aren't hiding when they're ranting about something. And then the flip side too, they're not usually hiding when they loved something. So if you're making the decision to click on it and you see, I'll use the negative review as an example. If you see somebody hated this book and it's like your favorite thing ever, it brought you out of a tough time, all those things that are why so many of us find books impactful, if you look at that and you find yourself getting angry, turn it off. Don't get then mad at that person for having a different experience with that book or whatever thing that they consumed, whether it's a movie or a TV show or a video game or a manga or whatever. So I guess I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I agree. People should be able to criticize the things you love. And if you're not in the space to see that criticism, then click off or don't look. That's it. I have had to ask myself sometimes, I'm like, I love this thing so much. Do I really want to hear other people talk negatively about it? No, I don't. And then I just move on. Now, if you're talking with your friend or something, that's a little different. But that's not really what I'm referring to. So I am in agreement. I think that we need to be better about allowing other people to have different opinions. Lawrence says, I'm gutted to say that I really wasn't a fan of The Year of Sanderson. I love many of his books, but I was left quite disappointed with the exception of Tress. So I have lots of thoughts on this one. This video is already really long, and I'm kind of thinking about doing a whole video dedicated to this. So I'm just going to say I have thoughts, some of which are positive and some of which are a little more negative. But I will maybe save that for another time. This video is already really long, so I think I'm gonna stop there. I'm so sorry if I missed your comment. I will say I will do another video kind of like this, but specific to romance trends. So if you are somebody that's very involved in romance or fantasy romance, or if you like fantasy books, but you have certain pet peeves when there is a romantic subplot or certain things you love, then be on the lookout. Come either end of January or early February, I'll be asking a question over on the community tab about trends to do with romance in books. And I think that'll be a lot of fun to dissect and chat about. A big thank you to all of you who wrote out your thoughts here. I really appreciate it. It was really fun to get to see a lot of your thoughts. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.